Welcome to Beyond Barber School. I am your host, Barber Doza. This podcast, Beyond Barber School, is a space where listeners will hear stories from barbers, educators, and founders that are elevating the barbering industry in and out of the barbershop. Our hope here is to empower barbers with the knowledge necessary to take a courageous next step in their barber journey. Welcome to Beyond Barber School. We are doing a mini-series called The Guideline. This mini-series is where I'll share my perspective on a specific topic and get very, very practical. Hope here is still the same, that you'll hear my story, a little bit more about my journey, and ultimately be empowered with knowledge to take a strategic next step in your business. I hope you enjoy the series called The Guideline. Today's topic is how I prepare for taxes throughout the year, right? So Beyond Barber School, when you get Beyond Barber School, that's something you have to be prepared for. You got to be prepared for taxes. You need to know how to manage your money, how to, keep track of your income and expenses and all those things so that you're ready for tax season. Last thing you want is for, tax season come around and you owe a lot more money than you had expected, money that maybe you didn't necessarily prep for or save for. And so this conversation of taxes, I feel like within the barbering community, it's a big one. And as I connect with a lot of barbershop owners and barbers, there's a lot of fear surrounding it. And I think there's fear surrounding it just because there's not a lot of knowledge of how it works. I was personally intimidated by the topic, to be honest, because I'd never owned a small business before. I just worked for traditional employers and had a W-2. And, when you have a W-2, it's pretty easy. But when you're a small business owner, there's other things that you have to think about that honestly was all new for me. And so this context for this conversation, I feel like is hopefully, my hope is that you'll learn something and, have some value, at least from what I've personally done. I do have a free template that when I posted this on my Instagram, I just send it out. It's a free template. If you just DM me, I'll send you it. I actually had a decent amount of people hit me up for it. And yeah, if you want it, just send it to me. So send me your, email over IG and I'll send it to you and you can make a copy of it and then edit it and make it however you want to make it. So, all right, the context for this topic. So yeah, big fear I feel like surrounding taxes for barbers, especially even with how you collect money. I feel like a lot of shop owners just being like, I don't want Uncle Sam to know how much money I'm making. And that's part of maybe the debate, whether if you take card or not, or this new conversation with Venmo and PayPal that's happening. Or I know I've seen a lot of barbers that are going towards, all cash only. But there's also some barbers that are even getting in the crypto game, and so they're accepting crypto now. So I just want to acknowledge there's more than one way to accept payment, but I'm not going to tell you how you should accept payment. That's not my job. But what I want to tell you is I do think that you need to keep track of it personally for yourself, whether it's just you have eyes on it, through a spreadsheet that you can control, that Uncle Sam won't necessarily have access to. And so whether you're taking cash, card, whatever, I think it's good to have kind of an official location where you can keep track of these things for yourself. And so a big thing here is also there's a lot of people you can follow. There's tax strategy, I feel like is a huge conversation right now. I'm a big fan of EYL University, Earn Your Leisure. They have amazing content that talks about tax strategy. Another guy by the name of Carlton Dennis, he's a Cal Poly alumni, a friend of a friend, and he's got amazing content also on tax strategy. I would follow both of them, Earn Your Leisure and Carlton Dennis on Instagram. They're posting quality content always, just in terms of business strategy and specifically tax strategy. But the point there is if you play it right, you can make very strategic business moves throughout your year that will help you keep your money, that you worked hard for. And so I just encourage you to go out and educate yourself on just how taxes work. And yeah, you'll probably be able to save a decent amount of money. All right. So anyways, I want to start this conversation just because I feel like I haven't really heard anybody talk about it specifically for barbers. And so I just like to share my experience and hopefully you can learn something from me. Edit it, tweak it, whatever you want. I'm not saying that this is, you have to do exactly what I do, but I hope that this is share you an idea that will hopefully spur on one for yourself. So let's talk about it. How do I prepare for taxes throughout the year? Now, the spreadsheet that I've mentioned, the one that I'll give you a free template on, I'm just going to kind of walk through it. So the first thing that I always keep track of is just income, right? The money that's coming in. So I have a spreadsheet where I keep track of, if I do a haircut, I keep track of, the client's name. I keep track of the service cost, whatever it was, whether it was a haircut and beard trim, lineup, whatever. I put that down, whatever service they got. I put the payment type, however they paid me, whether that was cash, card, Venmo. What I take all of those. I take cash, card, and Venmo. And then I actually write down how much they tipped me, how they tipped me, whether they tipped me cash, Venmo, card, whatnot, which then tallies up to be a total amount of money that I made off that service. I also keep track of if I sold any product and the price that I sold that product for. I also obviously teach, workshops. And so if I'm going to teach a workshop at a college, then I'll obviously keep track of how much money they paid me for that. I'll also keep track of, any other money that's coming in to my barber business. So I have my online course. So anytime someone signs up for my course, obviously that's also going into my income spreadsheet. I have another thing that's called Big Day Barbers, which is where I do wedding haircuts, where I travel on location to do wedding haircuts. So that's also a pocket of income. So I'll write that down, add that to my sheet. The income sheet is any time I get paid for something related to barbering, something related to my barber business, whether that's me cutting hair, me teaching a workshop, or etc. I will keep track of all that income. So that's the first thing. You got to know how much money is actually coming in. And I like to keep track of specifically how they're paying me, but also how much they're tipping me, because I actually like looking at that data to see on average how much are my clients tipping me, right? If they're on average tipping me $2, $3, $5, $10, $15, $20, right? That kind of gives me a gauge of okay, this is the cost of my service, but if they're tipping me this much, then if you ever were thinking about raising your prices, you can kind of have a gauge of well, my clients are already paying me this much in total, including tips. So a lot of them probably wouldn't even be tripping if I ended up, raising my price. The other thing is maybe to keep track of when a client pays you, depending on the type, whether it's cash, card, Venmo, whatnot, what is the trend there? Do they tip more if they're paying cash? Do they tip more if they're paying card? Do they tip more if they're doing Venmo? You got to keep track of those things, because when you're making those decisions of how should I accept payment, I think that's something to think about and know for yourself. For me, when I was taking Venmo, I noticed not a lot of people were tipping me, because they asked me how much is your service, and I tell them this is the cost. And I wasn't saying that's not including tip. I just felt like that was awkward. And so I actually just switched over to a business Venmo account, and the business Venmo account actually does have the tipping option. And so I've noticed that a couple clients who didn't necessarily tip me before, when I accepted payment through Venmo, they now started tipping me because they were prompted to give a tip but from Venmo. For you, maybe you're strictly cash and you want to keep track. Do people just pay you exactly what the cost of the service is, or are they paying you more? If you're taking different types of payment, it's good for you to kind of understand what are the trends of how your clients are actually paying you. So anyways, I really like keeping track of those different categories. And again, all this is in the spreadsheet that I can send to you if you want to actually have eyes on it. The next category that I keep track of is expenses, right? Money going out. So my expenses, this is, again, anything that I'm spending on my barber business, I keep track of. So some categories is obviously rent. If I'm doing my booth rent, I got to keep track of that. I also am writing down how I'm paying them, whether I'm paying them with cash, a transfer, card, whatnot, whether that's weekly, monthly, etc. I got to write that down. I also keep track of the date that I paid for that expense. And so whether it was a debit, and also the payment type, right? Cash, card, whatever. Another category might be marketing. So I had to pay for business cards, or obviously I have my website. So that's a annual, cost for me to have my website. There's a cost for me to have my domain. I have a graphic designer, and so he does all my graphic design work, so I pay him. Like, that's a business expense. Anytime I go buy new clippers or trimmers or any, clipper side or whatnot, cool care, combs, etc., anything that's used for my kit, like, I keep track of that. That's a business expense. Any even time that I eat lunch, or anytime I'm eating while on the clock, like if I'm working 9 to 5, then I got to go get a lunch. Like, I'll even keep track of how much money am I spending on food while I'm working. That's one huge expense that I feel like barbers spend a lot of money on, and I consider money going out. That's gonna, when you add it all up, like, that might be a big cost that can be adjusted. So other things though, like, as I've taught workshops, if I'm traveling for a workshop, then I need to keep track of mileage. And so, how much money did I spend on gas? I need a hotel. So how much money is that hotel going to cost me? I need to eat. So how much money, per diem do I need on food? I need to keep track of those things, because if someone's paying me to travel to do an event, that's going to be included in the cost of me going to do that. So if I'm keeping track of that, I need to have essentially like a mileage, multiplier. So whether, I think there's a standard rate, whether you take a cents amount and then multiply that by the amount of miles that you traveled. Like, I keep track of my mileage. If you're doing house calls, like when I do house calls, I'll keep track of my mileage. Like, that's a business expense. I wouldn't be traveling to so-and-so's house if I wasn't, cutting their hair. Like, that's part of my business. So mileage is also something that's an expense. That's a business expense, and can be something that is even deducted at the end of the year. So under the expenses, like, I literally, anything that is considered something for my business that's necessary, I will write that down and make sure I'm keeping track of that. From there, now that you have your income and you have your expenses, I do like a monthly profit loss statement. So on the next tab on my sheet, I have each month, and then I tally up like how much money came in my income, and then how much money did I spend, my expenses, and you subtract it, and then that's going to be like my net income that month. And so I do that each month and kind of try to track trends, because I think it's something you need to prepare for, even as barbers, to know like, hey, when is the busiest time of year for you? When is the slowest time of year for you? If you can be able to answer that question by looking at data, to be like, well, the summer is really busy, or obviously the holiday season is like maybe the busiest time of year, you can start to kind of prepare for maybe lower parts of the year. Maybe you need to save a little bit more or whatnot. Just kind of understand trends and forecasting for how much money is going to be coming in for your business. So also it might show you, well, hey, this month has been slow. How can I do something creative to try to increase business or increase clientele, increase services during that month, so that I can try to like make that month a little bit more, a little bit more money coming in. So also, it's good to, when you subtract it all and take your expenses back, now you can actually this is reality of like, okay, I maybe made $500 in the day, but I spent, just bought new clippers. That was $400. It's like, well, I only netted $100 or whatnot. And so that's something that you need to just have. It's just good to track this, and obviously this is a conversation to prepare you for taxes at the end of the year, because when you're obviously submitting your taxes, like, you need to show how much income, came in, but you're also then going to talk about the expenses and list those out, so that the, IRS is essentially looking at how much money is your business actually worth? Like, how much what is the taxable amount of income? And so if you're not keeping track of these things throughout the year, the last thing that you want to do at the end of the year is like go back through your statements and like try to tally everything up. Like, that takes a ton of time. Like, there's that image of the accountant saying like, give me all your receipts, and they're like counting all the receipts that you had throughout the year. Like, that's a nightmare. And so if you can get ahead of that and create a good habit of, this is something you do, weekly, and every month you kind of look back and make sure your statements are, they're all consolidated or resolved. That's a great habit, I'd say, so that you're not scrambling. Because also there's quarterly, right? You're going to submit your taxes on a quarterly basis. And so preparing for that, even each quarter, and doing this, creating these good habits like this will even make, submitting your quarterly taxes a lot easier. Your accountant's going to be hyped. And all this is, make sure you're even consulting an accountant in this. I am not obviously a CPA. I'm not a financial planner, but these are things that I've just kind of learned along the way, and the research I've done, and kind of the system I've created for myself, and it's been working for me so far. Next category I wanted to talk about, something I think you should keep track of, is your inventory. So think about your barber kit. Now, I'm sure everyone has heard the horror story of a barber getting jacked, right? A barber shop broken into, and someone doesn't maybe steals the register, but also they're stealing all of the tools. Like, let's talk, our tools are mad expensive. Like, your shears could be, if you, depending on what brand you went with, it could be thousands of dollars. Your clipper is obviously like $400 if you add all up your kit is worth bank. Like, it's, if people know, people are coming and they're stealing, they're going to take clippers and resell that because they know how much money it is. And so in the event that you do get jacked, like, you kind of got to prepare for the worst. You obviously need to have insurance, but when you're going to claim or file a claim for insurance, you need to have proof of what you owned and even know what the value is of your barber kit. So if something's missing, you should have an inventory that says, I have, 2 of these clippers and one of them is gone. So you have even the receipts of when you buy something. Like, that's a good habit to have. Anytime you purchase something for your kit, like, try to have a paper trail and say, this is when I bought it, this is where I bought it, the vendor, this is the receipt, etc. So that when you, submit the claim and the insurance agency is like, we need to see proof of this, then whatever your barber kit is worth, like, they can write you a check so that you can go out and, buy new tools for your kit because they were stolen. If you don't have a paper trail, then the insurance agency might think that this is fraud, or they might not trust you and they might not write you the check. And then now you got to go out of pocket to go buy more tools. So have a inventory sheet where you have written out everything. Like, I'm talking all your clippers, all your trimmers, all your shears, your combs, all your capes, like, anything that's at your station, bags, like, depending on what items you have, like, that's a pretty penny, right? It's not cheap. So you want to just have that all written down in one place so that if, worst case scenario, knock on wood, nobody gets jacked. But if you did, like, you're able to, get a check from the insurance agency and you can, go buy some more tools. All right. I want to say, like, I wrote out all these things, right, in a spreadsheet. I know we're coming up on 20 minutes. And so this is, kind of tying it all together. Like, throughout the year, how I prepare for taxes, I have this spreadsheet that is really that's my main official kind of document that I have. I use it for when it's tax season. Like, I just go there and I can see exactly how much money came in, how much money went out, etc. And so how I prepare is just, I really do, anytime at the end of the day after I'm cutting, I go back to my spreadsheet and I actually will update, the services that I did that day. I'll also, if I spent money, then maybe not necessarily do it daily, but at least monthly on expenses wise, even try to do it weekly, like the end of the week, just have it be a rhythm for you where you look back and kind of check, okay, how much money did I spend this week? So you can kind of see, all right, like, this is how much money I'm actually worth, or how much money is actually coming in. So if you can create these habits on a daily, weekly, monthly basis, taxes are going to be a lot easier for you. And you can now sit down with a tax strategist and show them data, because it's really hard for a tax strategist to sit down with you to help you if you don't even know what the numbers are, right? Like, if you're going to have a consultation with a professional, specifically, an accountant or financial planner, one of the first things that they're probably going to do is sit down and be like, okay, like, how much money are you making? Can I see proof of that? Like, how do I know? If you're giving them ballpark numbers of like, oh, well, I make $500 a day, and it's like, well, do you have a paper trail? Like, can you show me proof of that? Like, especially as a small business owner, like, it's kind of embarrassing if someone were to ask you, like, oh, how much is your business worth? And you're like, I don't know. Or like, hey, how much money do you make? And you're like, I don't know. I make like $500 a day. It's like, well, do you actually make $500 a day? Or Is it like, no, it's $500 a day on a Saturday, but on a Tuesday you only make 200 or 150? And a big part of this, at least why I wanted to do this even fresh out the gate, is because you hear so many things about how much money barbers are making, right? 6-figure barber, or etc. Like, oh man, so and so is telling me they make $500 a day. I'm like, that's good. If you add that up, like, that's real good money. And for me, coming straight out of barber school, I wanted to figure out for myself, like, okay, how much money is actually in this, right? Like, have these barbers just been blowing smoke, or like, are they actually making that? And if they are making that, like, what's the cost of their haircut? How many haircuts are they doing in a day? Like, for me, I wanted to kind of debunk the myths that were out there, because like, you hear all these things of how much people are making in the industry, and I just was like, I want to know if I can make that, and like, what is the work that goes into making that, so that you can kind of forecast it out and see maybe how long it might take you to get to where you want to be. And so now I'm like, man, okay, I made $400 in a day. And it's like, in order to do that, I had to do this amount of haircuts, and even like, dang, I was tired. Like, that was a lot of cuts, right? Or I was exhausted. But all that to say is my motivation was honestly just a curious posture of wanting to know how much money is actually in this industry, and what is it going to be like for me? And yeah, it's cool, because then as you look back at even your monthly, statements or your annual statements, the money that you make will definitely grow, obviously, as you increase your clientele and maybe, raise prices or whatnot. It'll be cool to be able to look back and see, man, my business was worth this, year one when I was fresh out of barber school, and then 10 years down the line, like, now look at where I'm at. And so you'll be able to see that growth, right? Which will be, I think, gratifying and will be encouraging for you. And so anyways, I'll say that's how I prep for taxes. Again, I have that free sheet. It's a Google spreadsheet that I can just send to you. It's free. I might actually make a video of how I created it, just if you don't have background on creating Excel spreadsheets or Google spreadsheets. I really enjoy kind of nerd out on making these things, just because I really enjoy data and understanding the reality using numbers. But if you want that, then just go ahead and DM me on Instagram, right? My IG is Barberdoza, and just send me your email and I will shoot that over to you. You'll make a copy of it, and then you can edit it and do whatever you want to it. So yeah, that's just my gift to you. Hopefully it's helpful for you and gives you a good starting place. All right, thanks for listening. We'll catch you at another episode. Again, if you found some value here, if you think somebody else found value, feel free to send them or share it with them so that they can give it a listen. And yeah, this has been Beyond Barber School, the podcast. I'm your host, Barberdoza. I'll see you next time. Take care. Peace.